There's no getting away from the fact that we need food in order to function. That part is simple, but if you add in training for triathlon, the what and when is a topic that's always open for debate. Well, today I'm going to be bringing you some tips that are going to help you hone your nutrition planning for the season ahead. Starting with January and the most popular topic, weight management. Don't worry though, this is not a weight loss video, but the beginning of the year is a great time to address your goals for the season and look at what best body composition you want that's going to complement your training and your racing plans. And it's really common to see people panic after the Christmas period when they put on a few pounds and they go on some drastic weight loss diet to try and get rid of those pounds as quickly as possible. But really you need to be focusing on fueling adequately so that you can train well. And that should be the main focus. If you're training well, you'll find that your body naturally starts to change shape anyway, and you want to make sure you've got enough fuel in order to do that, as otherwise you're actually going to be detrimenting your fitness. You might notice some of the pros actually post pictures of their race weight compared to their winter weight, and some of them do carry a few extra pounds, which is entirely normal. It's almost like giving the body a little bit of a break and a bit of a buffer when you're doing those tough high volume sessions in the winter, as opposed to being in race season when you're treading that really fine line between being in tip-top condition or getting ill and injured. So it is entirely fine to carry a few extra pounds at that time of year. But that said, if you're someone who's put on quite a lot of weight over the winter, or you need to lose weight, more than just those few pounds that you can do in race season, you actually need to address that earlier on in the year, as you're not going to be able to work any miracles when it comes to race season. When to eat is almost as important as what to eat. And when you're strapped for time, you'll quite often find you'll get a lot of your training done early in the morning, first thing, and it's really tempting to just get up and go and actually forget breakfast. Now, whether you realize it or not, you'll actually be doing fasted training in this situation, and that has pros and cons. And if you're doing a long, steady state session, that's entirely fine. But you need to bear in mind that it doesn't mean you're going to be actually losing weight by doing a fasted session. It's just going to be changing the fuel that your body is using. So for that long, low intensity session, your body will start to metabolize fat instead of carbohydrate for that, and you'll have plenty of that stored. However, if you do have a really key important session that's going to be high intensity, then your body will need glycogen and therefore carbohydrate in which to fuel. So for that, you'll need to allow a little bit of extra time to get up in order to have breakfast, or at least a snack, in order to get the most out of your session. What you eat before a training session depends on two things: A, what the session's going to entail, and B, how long you have until that session. So say, for example, you've got a high intensity session that's just half an hour away. Well, you're going to need to have something that's really easy to digest, that can get the carbohydrates into your bloodstream really quickly. So for example, a banana could work, a gel, or anything sugary that you can stomach and get the energy from really quickly. If, however, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got a long, say, steady state 4-hour bike ride planned and it's not for another 2 hours, well, then you can have something that's much more slow releasing in its energy, and maybe even include some proteins and fats, and for example, even a small meal like a jacket potato with some tuna. And then it comes to when to eat. Well, it's very much a personal thing, as everyone's stomach is different. You'll find that some people might be able to have a full meal almost an hour before a training session, whereas somebody else might need to have 3 hours for the same session. But don't be too disheartened if you are someone who needs longer. I was certainly in that window a while ago, but you can start to train your stomach by working out what it can digest more easily, but also just starting to decrease that time. You'll find that you get naturally more used to it. It's usually a challenge trying to fit your training into your day, let alone your nutrition, and as a result, proper meals can become quite a challenge. Now, snacks are obviously great and can help you get through and keep your energy levels up, but really a meal is more desirable. So sometimes it might even mean splitting your meal, and you can, say, have a hard evening session, but it's quite late in the evening, and you know you won't be that hungry afterwards, so you can actually cook your meal and eat some of it before, and then once you've finished, you've got the rest of it already waiting for you. Now, we've talked a lot about fueling before your training, but you also need to look at refueling and getting that energy in as soon as you can afterwards. And the general rule of thumb is the sooner the better when it comes to recovery nutrition. And if you know you're not going to be going home or having a proper meal, it's a good idea to carry something with you that's going to tick those nutrition boxes. And you have to think about what's coming up later. So ultimately, you do want to replace those glycogen stores that you will have used in your training. So that means taking on carbohydrate. But if you've got quite a long window, or it's maybe the last session of the day, you also want to consider taking on protein, because that's essential for helping your body to be able to repair and ultimately get stronger. It's time to mention hydration, a really important aspect of nutrition that is so often easily overlooked. And I'm not just talking about water here, as when you work out, you obviously sweat and therefore you lose salt and minerals as well. So it's important to make sure that you're adequately hydrated before you start a session. And if it's in a tough one or in a really hot environment, you need to make sure you obviously top that up as you go and make sure you adequately replenish your hydration when you complete it, as dehydration can have a really negative impact on your performance both in training and when it comes to racing, obviously. Now, it's also worth being aware that thirst can sometimes disguise itself as hunger. So if you are feeling really hungry, just make sure that you check you've had enough hydration already, especially if you're someone who's trying to lose a little bit of weight. Snacking goes hand in hand when training for triathloners. Realistically, even with the best planning and structure, you're still going to need more than your 3 meals a day in order to complement your training. And I've already talked about when to fit food in. And it's easy to think that you shouldn't snack if you're trying to lose weight, for example, but actually it is quite the opposite. Because I don't know if you've, like me, have ever got to that phase when you're so hungry you can't even think straight. And say, for example, you might have to go and do your supermarket shop on the way home from training. Well, that can be a little disastrous if you haven't had a snack beforehand. So it's a really good idea to keep some emergency stashes maybe in your bag or even in your car. I always have a bar in my glove box just for those situations. And like we talked about, getting in food straight after is a good idea. And you might be a little bit limited for space in your bag or you've carried too much weight, but recovery drinks are great. And a way around that is actually to have a powdered form that you just add cold water to, so you can have it in your bag and it keeps for quite a while. And then when you do suddenly find yourself in need, you just get some cold water, mix it up, and you're good to go. Late night snacks might be seen as a bad thing and often associated with post-drink munchies, but actually having a healthy snack before bed can be a real advantage to your training. Say, for example, you've had your main meal really early in the evening, quite a few hours before you're going to bed, and you know you've got a tough training session in the morning. Well, you don't want to be sort of naturally fasting for that longer period, so having something to eat before you go to bed will just help your body with repair, as when you're sleeping, that's when it does a lot of its repairing. And with that in mind, it's a good idea to have something that's going to be high in protein. So for example, a yogurt or maybe even having a hot milk will all help with that process. And at the end of the day, food is fuel for your body when you're training for triathlon, but that food can be enjoyable. So it's a matter of experimenting and working out what works for you, listening to your body and knowing what it needs for your training, but also listening to your stomach and working out what you can digest for what types of sessions. So make sure you plan ahead, but still listen to your body, as it'll be craving something for a reason. Well, hopefully I've not made you feel too hungry by watching this and talking too much about food. Give us a thumbs up like if you have, and hit the globe on screen to subscribe and get all of our videos here at GTN. And we talked a little bit about planning there. If you want some help on how to plan your season, you can find a video for that just down here. And if you want to see a video comparing the calories burnt with cycling against running, well, that one's just here.